Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving deep into a totally hidden ecosystem right inside you, one that literally dictates your overall health. I want you to picture your digestive tract like a cozy, bustling little paper-cut world. It's managed by trillions of industrious animal helpers, and right at the top, acting as the head of security, is a very vigilant cat keeping your primary intestinal barriers strong. We're going to look closely at how your daily diet choices are either helping that deep internal world absolutely thrive or completely starving it out. And don't worry, we'll definitely be sharing some super practical everyday dietary tricks you can use to protect your digestion and keep things like constipation far, far away. So let me just ask you a super direct question right off the bat. Are you starving your gut without even knowing it? I know, it sounds a little alarming, but we so often think our meals are just meant to fuel our muscles or our brains. But actually, every single time you eat, you're also feeding those trillions of microscopic animal friends. And if you aren't giving them the exact nutrients they need, well, your little helpers are going hungry. And that sets off a massive, totally negative chain reaction throughout your entire body.
And honestly, 79.5%. That number just brilliantly captures the sheer scale of the problem we're looking at. According to comprehensive nutritional data, nearly 80% of people are completely failing to meet their basic daily fiber requirements. Almost 80%. That is not just some minor dietary slip-up, right? That is a widespread, silent epidemic. The vast majority of us are literally walking around unknowingly depriving our bodies of the absolute most critical nutrient needed to keep our internal machinery, our little paper-cut world, running smoothly.
Okay, let's look at part one, the scene of the crime. Early signs of trouble. You see, when your system is starved of fiber, it doesn't just quietly adapt. Oh no, your body starts sending out some pretty immediate distress signals. The clinical guidelines actually point out that the earliest and most recognizable red flags of fiber deficiency are pretty much what you'd expect, but they're important to spot. We're talking about infrequent bowel movements, so going less than once a day. Stools that rank as a 1 or 2 on the Bristol stool scale, which basically means hard, lumpy shapes that are just incredibly difficult to pass. Add to that constant straining, uncomfortable abdominal bloating, and that super frustrating feeling of, incomplete evacuation. These really aren't just minor annoyances. They are literally your body's initial cry for help, telling you there's a severe lack of fiber.
To really wrap our heads around the impact here, let's contrast two very different digestive timelines. In a healthy, fiber-rich situation, you're looking at daily, comfortable movements. Why? Because fiber acts exactly like a sponge, grabbing onto water and creating that necessary bulk. But without fiber, man, things slow to an absolute crawl. It's like your head of security cat and all those little animal helpers are suddenly trapped in gridlock traffic without any tools to clear the road. Movements might only happen every 3 to 7 days, which often brings along increased colonic pressure and abdominal pain. You're just drastically slowing down your body's natural internal clock. So, moving on to part 2, the microscopic investigation inside the gut ecosystem. All right, let's zoom in a bit from those big physical symptoms down to the microscopic level of your intestines to figure out exactly why this happens. And the evidence from the journal Nutrients is honestly mind-blowing. Did you know a fiber-free diet literally alters your anatomy? It physically shrinks the length of both your small intestine and your colon. No joke. And not only that, but the protective mucus layer coating your intestines gets severely depleted. So without dietary fiber, the actual physical real estate of your gut, that cozy world we talked about, literally starts to break down and wither away. To understand exactly why your gut shrinks, we really have to talk about short-chain fatty acids, or SCFAs for short. You really need to stop thinking of fiber as just waste that passes through you. Instead, think of it as the absolute primary food source for your good bacteria. When your little microbial helpers feast on dietary fiber, they ferment it and churn out these amazing SCFAs. And these fatty acids are the essential fuel that keeps your head of security cat wide awake and energized, making sure your intestinal barrier stays strong, healthy, and perfectly intact. Let's trace this beautiful biological cascade step by step, because it's actually super elegant. Step 1, you eat some complex carbohydrates, like plant fibers or legumes. Step 2, your gut microbiota start fermenting that fiber. Step 3, they pump out all those amazing short-chain fatty acids. And finally, step 4, your intestinal barrier gets totally fortified, locking pathogens out and heavily suppressing inflammation. It is a highly efficient, highly protective system. But of course, that's only as long as you actually keep feeding it. But what happens when we break that chain reaction? Well, the fallout of fiber starvation is just chaotic. First, your gut microbiota diversity drops right off a cliff. Then your protective mucus secretion plummets right along with it. The critical carbon to nitrogen ratio in your gut falls, which basically means there are way fewer nutrients going to the good bacteria, drastically reducing your total bacterial load. Ultimately, your intestinal barrier becomes highly permeable. You are essentially throwing the protective gates of your cozy paper-cut world wide open to whatever invaders happen to wander by. Now for part 3, the unforeseen victims, beyond the digestive tract. The crazy thing is, this localized gut distress doesn't just stay confined to your stomach. Research from the American Chemical Society outlines this incredible cascade known as the gut-brain axis. When you disrupt your microbiota, it actually elevates systemic inflammatory markers throughout your body. But get this, it's even more surprising. Intestinal inflammation can actually lead to the hyperactivation of the HPA axis. That's your brain's primary stress response system. Yes, you heard that right. Starving your gut microbes can quite literally trigger the onset of anxiety-like behaviors. Your gut and your brain are constantly talking to each other in a really profound way. And beyond the brain, there's also a massive metabolic impact. Basically, a fiber deficiency completely wipes out the satiety-promoting effects of your meals. In plain English, without fiber, you lose your natural cues that tell you you're full. This makes maintaining a healthy weight so incredibly difficult. And as we just saw, it leaves you highly vulnerable to chronic, systemic inflammation across your entire body. It's a real double whammy. All right, let's get into part 4, the antidote, dietary solutions, and the fiber paradox. Okay, so we've seen the damage. Let's pivot to the good stuff, the actionable solutions and everyday dietary methods you can use right now to improve your gut health. But before we get to your daily targets, I have a fascinating little medical plot twist for you. Listen to this finding. Stopping or reducing dietary fiber intake reduces constipation and its associated symptoms. Wait, what? Didn't we literally just spend the last few minutes talking about how crucial fiber is for preventing constipation? Well, this quote from the World Journal of Gastroenterology highlights something scientists call the fiber paradox. Let's clarify this paradox carefully because it's important. For the vast majority of us, fiber totally prevents deficiency and keeps us regular. However, if a patient has established chronic idiopathic constipation, which essentially means severe constipation where the underlying medical cause is totally unknown, piling on more fiber can actually make the traffic jam way worse. For those very specific chronic cases, stopping fiber acts kind of like a hard reset. This perfectly illustrates why chronic, ongoing issues absolutely must be evaluated by a doctor to rule out organic causes before you just blindly start piling on supplements. But for the general population just aiming for optimal gut health and trying to prevent everyday constipation, here are your actionable targets. Adult women, you need about 25 to 32 grams per day. Adult men, you should be aiming for 30 to 35 grams. If you're over 65, keep a baseline of at least 20 grams a day. And kids need it too, scale down to their size, of course. Think about really simple daily methods here, tossing a handful of almonds into your breakfast, swapping out white rice for whole grains, or maybe adding some black beans to your dinner. These are super easy daily dietary tricks to make sure you are feeding all those helpful little creatures inside you. Honestly, the most encouraging takeaway from all this research is just how highly adaptable your gut really is. If you've been slacking on your fiber intake lately, don't worry, it is definitely not too late. By adopting a varied diet that's rich in plant fibers, nuts, legumes, and targeted prebiotics, you can quickly reshape your gut microbiota. Within a really short period, you can restore that colonic energy balance, rebuild that protective mucus layer, and get your cozy internal paper-cut worlds and your whole digestive timeline right back on a healthy, comfortable track. So as we wrap up today's investigation, I want to leave you with a final, kind of provocative thought to chew on. The next time you sit down to eat, I want you to look at your plate and ask yourself, is this meal feeding just me? Or is it also feeding the trillions of microscopic animal helpers working around the clock to keep me healthy? Always remember to feed the whole ecosystem. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive, and I really hope you feel empowered to go out there and take full control of your gut health.
Knowledge grows through sharing. What are your thoughts on today's topic? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe as we continue to grow together.